What is going on, guys? It is Brett. I want to talk today about something that I find very interesting that is going on right now, and that is the fact that sometimes movies or pieces of entertainment become part of a cultural battleground. You're not exactly sure why. You just know that it happens. A good example, at least off the top of my head, I don't write this stuff out. I just kind of start talking and hope for the best. A good example off the top of my head would be Hogwarts Legacy, which became this huge battleground between fans, not even necessarily fans of Harry Potter, but people who were not fans of the way that the culture was shifting at that time. I guess the word cancel culture was being used a lot more at that time. It's not used nearly as much these days, but Hogwarts Legacy was an example of that, where the media, because they don't like J.K. Rowling, they had a problem with this game, and then people online had a problem with this game, and were basically saying that if you were to purchase this game, you were going to be considered a transphobic person. And what ended up happening is it backfired on them and ended up making a whole bunch of money. Now, that's not exactly a one-to-one comparison with Captain America: Brave New World, because that's kind of the opposite of what happened here. But what I'm saying is that certain properties, certain films, certain pieces of entertainment, they become cultural battlegrounds. And right now, that is what's going on with Captain America: Brave New World, because look, everybody was first having their arguments about Cap, about whether Sam Wilson should be playing Captain America, and then it became about the budget, which is going to be a huge part of this one here, which is a back and forth between audiences and people in the know, part of the legacy media discussing the budget of this film, which I do believe has become this other aspect of it that I find to be very, very funny. But what happened over the weekend was the first week of Captain America's release made like $192 million at the box office, and most people, from what I saw, some people didn't like it, but most of what I saw was that it was just average, that they're like, it was a Marvel movie. It was what it was, but it didn't stop the film from being a lightning rod for controversy as people started going back and forth about whether this movie was going to make it into profitability. And what I said when it came out over the weekend was that for movies like this, you can't really look to week one to see whether it's going to be profitable or not. You have to look into whether the movie has a decent hold from week 1 to week 2, because that will tell you whether any of the movie's interest generated was positive, whether the word of mouth was enough to get, somebody who's a diehard Marvel fan goes out and tells their friend who may or may not be in the know, hey, I love this movie. And then that friend says, you know what? My curiosity got the best of me. I'm going to go see it. So what we're seeing now is that does not look to be the case, as the film had a 68% drop off from week 1 to week 2. It actually had, I believe, an 82% drop off from Friday to Friday. So now people are starting to get into their discussions and their arguments about, I'm not seeing the typical argument we'd have here, which is that you're all racists and you're all bad people because you didn't go see a Captain America movie, which is patently insane and absurd. If you don't like something, you don't have to go and see it. I don't care who is in it, of any race, gender, creed, or color, does not matter. If you don't want to go see something, don't go see it. And it's more indicative of the apathy that people are feeling towards Marvel right now, which is that, phase 1 through 3 had a great through line. It had a consistent villain that you were building up to. And since then, it's been this scattershot rigmarole of things being messed up in the movies. They did Kang, then they had to get rid of Kang. People had the television shows connect, and people are kind of annoyed by that because not everybody has Disney Plus. It doesn't have the status that the first 3 phases of Marvel had, and that is not the fans' fault. It's nobody's fault other than the studio, who hasn't been able to put together a cohesive story to pull people in for this type of storytelling. But the thing is here, guys, is that movies like this at the box office, just from what I understand, they make like 60 or 70% of their total box office run in the first 2 or 3 weeks, and they have to make 2.5 to 3 times their budget to be profitable. Now, the number that kept getting floated around for this film, it just came up out of nowhere. It was in Discussing Film, and then all of these sites, whoever they referenced it from, whether it was Variety or Deadline, started parroting this number. The movie cost $180 million. The movie cost $180 million. Now, most people with any sense of a brain understand that is most likely not true, but since this movie was not filmed in certain countries, countries, you're probably not going to see tax return filings that actually allow them to allow people to judge whether it was similar to like what they did with what was it? Ant-Man. The budget was listed at like $200 million, but then it was revealed later that it was way, way higher than that. I think north of $300 million. And a lot of that information was never updated, and people never know. And when they add that, when they say that $180 million, what they want to give you in your head, what they want to put in your head is that the movie only has to make $180 million to profit. Right? Well, as you and I know, that is intellectually dishonest because, as we said, because they split these movies' the box office returns with the theaters and also with investors. I'm sorry, that's not so simple. It has to make 2.5 to 3 times its budget. Because look, even if you make more of your money overseas, a U.S. distributor keeps less of that money. A U.S. studio keeps less of the money from overseas box office than they do from box office here at home. So you have to even guess higher than that depending on where the movie is succeeding. But the numbers aren't really my thing. I am not good with the numbers. I just know when they're using the numbers to lie, because they're parroting this idea that you have to make $425 million to break even. Well, if that's not even using the 2.5 to 3 times model. That would be like what, 450 to $550 million if they want this movie to break even on a movie where I'm supposed to believe that they spent $180 million on filming, special effects, and we're just going to cover our eyes and pretend like that is supposed to include the marketing for this film as well, which did have a tremendous amount of marketing. I certainly saw digital ads for this film all the time. But here's the problem. The movie is it's too convoluted for people who don't watch the Disney Plus shows and all of the other things. And nowadays, when you're giving audiences homework, it's liable to not bring people into the theaters. There was this that I saw yesterday. This is really funny because I am not a big video game guy. I'm just not. I love everything up through PlayStation 2. But for the most part, these days I'm on the out in that industry. But I do know who Hideo Kojima is. I would say Hideo, like Hideo Itami. I do know who he is. I do know that he's the creator of Metal Gear Solid. I do know that he is well-renowned in the industry. And what's funny is he's kind of known for giving his film hot takes. That's kind of how I know him, because they will, every so often when he puts up a review, a tweet for a movie, it'll get covered by like the discussing films. And he was just kind of confused by this film. This was his tweet. He says, I watched Captain America Brave New World in IMAX. I vaguely remember Sam receiving the shield in Endgame, but when did he officially become Cap? Is it because I haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier? And what's this about the Avengers being reorganized? I'm also getting it mixed up with the Thunderbolts trailer? Yep. That's the thought that a lot of people have towards a lot of this stuff, is that when you give people homework to have stuff to cover, it's just going to tune out the normies. What's funny is, like, look, if you were talking like comic book crossovers back in the day, it could get expensive, but for the most part, it's not even necessarily about the expense for them. It's for people who were die-hard fans of the medium. That's how they survived, and that, in a lot of ways, is how it still survived. It's by die-hard collectors and die-hard fans of these franchises who are willing to overlook the fact that it's not the most fashionable medium anymore. But that's what keeps that form of art alive, is the people who want to collect those things. But here's the thing. Movies and television are not for the diehards. Movies and television are for normies. And the normies want to be able to pick up a movie as is, go into it, and be like, oh, okay, I had a good time. Look, there are exceptions for the success of these franchises these days. Like, there haven't been a whole ton of bright spots post-Phase 3, but what the exceptions you get are like Deadpool and Wolverine and Spider-Man. That's because those characters are now so popular, they transcend the apathy that people are feeling towards the medium. And when people have to go and spend 8 hours to watch a show, they're not necessarily going to want to invest their time in that. It's a lot easier to invest 2.5 hours at a movie one time for an evening of entertainment. And we are long past the days of Disney Plus streaming services, Disney Plus Marvel streaming shows being pumped out all the time, much to the delight of everyone during the pandemic. We're past that. and it already caused problems. I still remember, look, I didn't watch WandaVision till later, but when I went into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, there was a whole bunch of stuff that you had to be like, what is going on? Like Wanda in general in that was such a mystery because I wasn't caught up on the series, and the same stuff is going on for what's going on here. What I think is funny is one of my favorite movies of all time is X-Files Fight the Future. I love X-Files Fight the Future. I think it's a great movie. But at the time that I saw it when it came out in 1998, I would have been 12 years old. I probably saw it in that within a couple of years there. I hadn't watched the X-Files TV show. I knew what it was because the X-Files was a huge cultural phenomenon at the time, but I was not watching the X-Files. But it was a good little science fiction movie with a great story. The essence of Mulder and Scully's connection, the essence of the X-Files drips through every instance of that, like every inch of that movie, but you didn't have to watch the X-Files TV show to get it or to enjoy it. Now, if you do go back and you do rewatch the X-Files, which I did much later into adulthood, and then you watch X-Files Fight the Future, it's even better and it's a lot more fun, but the movie is good on its own, and I think that's a credit to, I believe it was Rob Bowman. Somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I believe Rob Bowman is the one who made it, who of course has gone on to be one of the most successful creators in Hollywood, not, starting off in the X-Files and going on to many, many more things. Him, a lot of those X-Files creators, oddly enough, outside of Chris Carter, went on to be very, very successful, and that's a testament to their talent. So I just want to, it wasn't just what he said. It was also Rob Liefeld got in on this, and he was talking about, remember, if you guys don't remember, a couple of weeks ago, he was upset where he felt that he was respected that as the co-creator of Deadpool, he wasn't invited to the after party of the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, and he's cut ties with Marvel since then. And I saw him and Bo DeMaio, who was the maker of X-Men 97, who was also fired for very, very different reasons. Both of them kind of talking about how, the movie's week 2 box office drop is a problem and how it's a problem for Kevin Feige. And a lot of it feels a bit like piling on. Look, I'm not going to these guys for the most neutral of takes. Obviously, they aren't looking at this in a neutral perspective. They've got a history with this company, and they've got their own little axe to grind. But it goes to show, right? It goes to show. Some of the other stuff here was... where did I have this here? Oh, yes. Tom Connor says it doesn't even really matter. This is from a tweet that said, "This is an absolute lie. Captain America Brave New World cost $180 million before 2 rounds of extensive reshoots. If anything, it costs more than any other MC movie to date." Look, I don't even want to get into the business of debating that. I think the amount of stuff that was cut and reorganized and restructured, how late in the game they brought in Giancarlo Esposito, the fact that Seth Rollins was like promoting a storyline in the movie with what was like the Serpent Society that just never ended up in there, and all of the things that signal to anyone who's paying attention and has any critical thinking skills at all the things that signal that this movie cost more than the traditional $200 million movie. If we can't prove it, it's almost a non-factor, but it doesn't really matter here. It's not even really worth discussing because I don't think that they're going to make their money back necessarily, even based on the $180 million production budget. If we were to be fair to them and do the 180 and not... A lot of people are saying they won't even make the $180 million movie budget back when you take it for 3 times its budget. But if we do the $180 million and you assume that you add $170 million for marketing, I'm sorry, you bring the budget to $270 million with marketing, and then you times that by 3. So it has to make $800 million to break even, and we're not even going to do that. We're going to base it on the $540 million break even of 3 times its $180 million budget. I don't even think it's going to make that back necessarily, given that it's trending downwards in the same way that Quantumania was, and not upwards in the way that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was. It's not even really worth discussing whether the budget was right. It's worth discussing why it is that movies like this have become some type type of weird, why budgets have become this cultural battleground. And I think the thing for me is like, it feels like using good box office return or bad box office return, and then having the studio's, you know, ironclad statement about what that budget was, so that they can give you a big black inked lettering of this film is successful. I feel like it's just being done to kind of support people's idea about this film, whether they like it or not. And both sides want a bit of confirmation bias about how they think this film fits into their idea of what the MCU is now as a whole. It doesn't really interest me. I think it's a better discussion to talk about whether maybe Marvel should look into disconnecting these films at all, because the success of Marvel doesn't hurt me or help me one way or the other. I would like to see more movies do well. I would like to see more stuff on par with Deadpool and Wolverine, which I had a great time with. But I think back, I'm in the midst of rewatching Daredevil seasons 1 through 3 in preparation of watching Daredevil Born Again. Again, there's that homework, but the difference is this was done, the stuff that I'm rewatching, I watched from years before Marvel started to feel like a chore, and Disney Plus series definitely have started to feel like a chore to a lot of people. But when it's something you really like Daredevil, you don't mind going back and rewatching that stuff before something comes out. And what I realized is that they had it right back when they were playing it fast and loose with whether the films and the television shows were connected at all. I loved the fact that they would make reference to the incident because it happened in New York, and it offers a thematic backdrop for the Daredevil series. It's allowed to inform a lot of the reasons things are the way they are, but they don't make you feel as if you have had to see every Marvel movie before it to understand what's going on. Anyone can understand the concept that a bunch of Avengers had a fight with Loki in New York and now things are very different, right? So that makes perfect sense. And I think they might be better off disconnecting everything. And in a lot of ways, the TV audience and the movie audience aren't necessarily the same person anymore. And you'd do well to treat the movies as special events where if you want to connect the movies and you want to connect the goings on between the films, that's one thing. But forcing people to have to go and watch every Disney Plus show before going to see a movie that's going to cost them a fortune, I think that you're actually just shooting yourself in the foot. I would be interested to know, guys. Look, I'm really excited for Daredevil Born Again. They've done a fantastic job with the marketing between that and the fact that I've really enjoyed Reacher season 3 already. Like, I feel like I'm getting the good end of things right now. I'm really enjoying it. I'm interested to know that anyone in here, if you have made it this far in the video, if you are going to watch Daredevil Born Again, and if so, has it inspired you to go back and re-watch the old Daredevil series beforehand? You're not gonna watch Jessica Jones, so I do like Jessica Jones season 1. I do like Punisher season 1. I do like Luke Cage season 1. I even like Iron Fist season 1, even if I know that it's objectively not that great. There was just something special about that time. Are you going to go back and rewatch Daredevil seasons 1 through 3? Do you like the other Netflix shows? Do you think that their approach to things prior to the multiverse saga and connecting everything, do you think that was better? Let me know down in the comments below. And remember, we are live on Pop Culture Crisis right here on YouTube, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is, of course, noon Pacific. You should join us there. Me and Mary have a lot of fun. Come hang out with us. See you there, guys. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.